Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream. All right, welcome to my live stream. I am Joshua Kemble. I'm going to be working on the graphic novel Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, which is a graphic novel, historical fiction graphic novel about the Brownings and their kind of, and Elizabeth Barrett Browning, the famous poet who wrote the famous poem that's How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways. And her husband, Robert Browning, who's basically another poet. It's basically about Elizabeth getting sucked into these strange supernatural seances that were really popular around the Victorian era. Nicotine gum. Got that. And I got my coffee brewed way too strong. Do you guys ever have that problem? I don't know. I brewed my coffee a little too strong, and I like my coffee black, so when you put in a couple too many grounds, it's like, and I like strong coffee. Actually, good memory of coffee that I had. The strongest coffee I've ever had that I loved was actually when my wife was giving birth. The nurses' station at the hospital that we had to stay at overnight was like, dude, it was crazy. The coffee that, I'm just saying, if you're ever at a hospital and you need a pick-me-up, ask the nurses to hook you up with their coffee, because they brew it for like late nights. Anyhow, even with that being considered, even though I like nurses' coffee, which is like the hardest coffee around, I think I might have brewed this a little too. I think I did one too many spoonfuls. So it's got that bitterness, but it might have also been that I didn't wait for the pot to brew. Poured it a little too early. We're not here to talk about coffee, you guys. I know Gary is in the chats. He says, good evening, listening while working. Cool. Glad to keep you company. What I'm going to do today is work on shading page 154. Maybe even coloring it. So we'll see. Probably stream for a couple hours. All right. Oh, and some great news. I have a debut of a brand new Jim Lujan cartoon today. So this was sent to me last night or the night before. I think it was last night. Oh, cool. Scott's here too. So it's good that Scott's here. And Gary's here because last night Jim Lujan sends me a link to a video, so I go to it. It's privated on YouTube, and I realize it's a new ad for my channel, which is crazy. I still think it's amazing and super flattering that Jim takes the time to do original animations. He's one of my favorite animators. The fact that he does that for my channel, for me, it's just a sweet thing. And it really moved me that he had made a new one. So then I'm already kind of choked up by like, wow, my friend took the time to make this cool new piece of art for me. And not only that, I find out that that the voices guested on it were none other than Scott Strickland and Gary Hodges. They had put this whole thing together without me knowing. Um, so it was like it honestly made my week. Like it was the coolest thing ever. And thank you guys for taking the time to do that. I have no idea how you kept that secret. It's very funny. But it's just kind of amazing, and yeah, it totally made my night. So I can't wait to debut that, and all because I needed a longer video for my breaks. That's, Frank's Adventures at the Library is really good, but it's nice to have one to kind of change it up so that it's, a longer one where if I need to make coffee or something like that, I'll have time. So thanks, guys. That made my day. I can't wait to debut it. I'll probably debut it at the latest at the hour mark. Maybe we'll play it a couple times because it's pretty amazing and magical. It's going to get a lot of airplay on here, but thank you to Jim Lujan if you're watching this after the fact. Yeah, that literally was one of the coolest things. Gary said, happy to contribute. Jim deserves 95% of the credit. Well, I don't want to spoil the video, but I will say that voice you do, Gary, is literally one of the funniest voices I've heard in any Jim Lujan cartoon. That is easily one of my favorite characters from Jim Lujan's cartoons. He's just so creepy and wonderful, and you voice him so what like it's just such a like marbly. Just I don't know. Even when you were doing it at Crestline last year, it's just like such a I can't even explain how funny it is. So I'll play it for you guys, but you'll see. I don't want to spoil it. I want people to be surprised by it. But Gary knows what I'm talking about. One of my favorite characters that they've ever done, and then Scott's voice work on it is so good. It's just so funny. It's beautiful. It's just a really amazing thing. And I don't take that lightly. Like when somebody takes their time. I mean, I'm an artist too, and it's like to take the time to make somebody something creative, and then also get a collaboration going. That's like a really big deal. So even if it was 5 minutes of your time to do the voice, which I mean, there's some really heavy voice work in there, so I'm guessing it was longer than 5 minutes that you guys spent on it. Thank you guys. It was cool. It was very meaningful. And it'll be cool for this channel and for people who are watching this to have like a new advertisement in the middle of it. So definitely, obviously, make sure you check out Scott Strickland's stuff, Gary Hodges' stuff. If you guys haven't checked out Dinosaurs versus Marsbots at this point, you should. It's a work of genius, probably the best one in the series. Because every book just gets more and more ambitious, and they're all good. But it's just like, yeah, I say this every time Gary's working on a new one, but I think this will be his best one. And you want to get in on the ground floor before everybody's talking about it, and you're not in on it. And then, yeah, I mean, Scott, make sure you check out Young and the Dead, and then obviously check out Jim Lujan's animations on YouTube. If you're not checking them out, you're really missing out on some amazing independent animation. Animation's actually something I'm going to talk about. I'm sure you guys are probably aware of what I might mention. But right now, what I'm going to do here... Oh, I forgot. I had this all set up for multi-streaming. I got to turn on my large, obnoxious thing. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Large obnoxious banner. So yeah, let's get going. So what I'm going to do is start shading this page. We're working on page 154. Basically, Sophie has showed up in the middle of the night to Casa Gaidi to check on, clearly kind of flummoxed and annoyed because his wife is sick. And part of why she's sick is because she's been doing a lot of laudanum, and having big social engagements that like stress her out and stuff like that. So, you okay, Ben?
Yeah.
You going to bed?
I'm looking for mom to ask for something.
Mom's in the room. She's in her room. Anyhow, so where was I? Oh yeah, so make sure you check out Jim Luhan talking about this page. So Sophie showed up. Robert's pretty annoyed, and now there's kind of a confrontation where Sophie is kind of feigning concern for Elizabeth, which is probably true concern. She's kind of a complicated character in this story, where she's sort of it's like an obsession that she has with Elizabeth, but she's also kind of a weird, like Victorian era clout chaser, and so it's like this fine line between obsession and wanting to almost like ruin her obsession, like kind of stalker type vibes. Anyhow, so that's what we're working on today. Um, so when I was younger, I really enjoyed South Park. No surprise there. A lot of people in my generation, I'm a guy who was in high school in the '90s, and so like South Park kind of came out at that kind of humor. Um, when you're in high school, you're like 17 years old. I think I was about 17 when South Park first started running. Um, it was just incredibly funny and irreverent, and I really enjoyed it. Now, was I one of those guys who like went around like quoting Cartman all the time and stuff like that? No, but I definitely a lot. I think South Park the movie at the time was one of my favorite movies. It was just the concept of it and the fact that they had gotten like a legit like Broadway guy to like come up with this play, and the play is actually like musical level play type music for like a silly, irreverent cartoon. I gotta say, I was so happy to see the latest episode of South Park. It was one of the funniest things I've seen in years, and it really it harkens back to like South Park the movie era South Park, but makes some pretty poignant and bold, um, and extremely like low ball like riffs on. I was thinking about that. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like one of the things that makes that kind of humor funny when it's punching up is when somebody has no sense of humor whatsoever, and then they get kind of raked across the coals. There's something kind of cathartic about that. It might go back to like the court jester or something, but there's something cathartic about comedy basically making fun of people who can't handle a joke. Like I always find that really beautiful when that happens, because the whole time I'm watching it, I'm realizing the guy it's making fun of, who has no sense of humor about themselves whatsoever, is gonna be watching this and just like fuming. It's so funny. So anyhow, that was a beautiful moment recently. I don't know if you guys have been able to see it, but I would recommend it if you used to like South Park back in the day. I know they draw, they're very irreverent and they kind of punch everywhere, and that's one of the things that was always funny about that show. Were funny to cross. Um, and I gotta say that like that last episode that's gone viral is just one of the funniest things I've seen in years. Um, and it also just brought back fond memories. That like I don't talk a lot about that show, but at around the time that movie came out, like I memorized the soundtrack. It was just so funny and irreverent and shocking. Um, yeah. Anyhow, so if you guys were at all like me back in those days, which is probably about 20 years ago now, um, almost 20 years ago. Then you should check that out. It's um okay. So, but anyhow, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, in those days, like, the '90s and stuff. Um, Gary said they were clearly inspired. Yeah, it's just, I mean, the live action. I think it was probably done with AI. But it's probably it's probably one of the few uses of AI where I'm like, okay, I'm okay with AI in this setting. But the live action ad is one of the best things I've seen in years. It's so funny. And what's funny, the target of their joke just like the, it's just the response is so funny. Like I think um what is it? Humor in the face, tyranny and humor are like beautiful when they're mixed. Like when humor targets tyrants, it's just one of the it. And I think it's like maybe might go down to like the instinctual part of humanity where um you know generally, like if you've ever been through like a bad experience in life, um which most people my age have, like that is one of the great equalizers of life is age, because by the time you reach pretty much like your mid 40s, you've probably experienced some heartbreak. um you've probably lost some loved ones, you've probably had some pretty bad stuff happen, maybe some health complications and issues, and the older we get, the more we just kind of unify in our horrible suffering on this planet. Um, but one of the things that tends to happen, at least that I've noticed, is like when you kind of go through really rough times, there humor is usually one of the few things you can kind of like turn to get through like really tough things. Um, it's kind of like our nature as humans is like to kind of seek out like the dark humor of a horrible situation, just to kind of make things lighter, to like lighten our loads in this weird world that we all exist in. Um, and it's also just like there's something punk rock about humor that like speaks truth to power and stuff. But anyhow, what I was thinking about when I was watching that episode, because it did remind me of that era of the '90s, um, is like animations back in the day when in the Spike and Mike festival, and I don't think people realize like how big how big of a deal that is. Like the Spike and Mike Sick and Twisted was like that's kind of, I think from what I understand, I think that's what Mike Judge like kind of grew out of. I think a lot of stuff that influenced South Park and stuff was like, I don't think South Park was in that animation festival, but my point is like there was a um like that was the cool indie kids at the time. And not only that, like there really wasn't like YouTube or anything like that to propagate a lot of like independent stuff. And the fact that Jim like pre-internet was kind of like part of that movement, really cool. Like I now Jim's like a pretty humble guy, so I don't think he'd really make a big deal about that, but it just dawned on me. I was like, yeah, it's like I mean, being a part of Spike and Mike's, man, like they had later on they had like DVD collections, and I think before that they'd sell like video cassette collections of the Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted, and a lot of what shaped humor and animation later on came out of a huge thing, and Jim was very much a part of that. Like I've told this story before, but like I'm really good friends with Jim now, but even before I knew Jim, my wife and I went to a Spike and Mike's in Long Beach when we were first dating. and we laughed harder than we've ever laughed. Well, not harder than we've ever, but we had a really good night, just watching these really funny, memorable cartoons. And they were all the place, like with the animators, but they were all people who shaped the shape of modern animation and humor in animation. And in there was Mama I'm a Thug by Jim Lujan. So and it was so funny that after that festival, I experienced all these like classic legendary animators that are in there. The one that got stuck in our heads was the Mama I'm a Thug song that Jim wrote from that, because there's a it's like a lot of Jim's animation where it has um his music and stuff in it. But it was just so funny because it was making fun of, like, it was kind of poking fun at like a popular Orange County, which the white kids who thought they were hard, you know, gangstas. Like that was a big thing at the time, and so to see somebody just kind of lampoon that in such a funny but like knowledgeable way was just really cool, and it was funny. I hadn't connected Jim with that initially, and then later on, oh hey Jim, I'm talking about you. um, I was just saying it's funny because like that South Park came out, and it reminded me of the '90s a lot because it really has the flavor of like South Park the movie, which I loved when I was like when it came out, and I think it came out when I was like 17. South Park started running, um, and it's just such a funny show. But anyhow, the latest South Park is just beautiful. It's like a good example of comedy and animation just sticking it to the man. But I was saying like that it's kind of cool that you were a part of Spike and Mike's and stuff, which is really where I think a lot of those key figures, not Trey Parker and Matt Stone, but definitely like Mike Judge, pioneers of like indie animation, like where they cut their teeth. And I was just saying how cool it is that you were a part of that like movement. It's like, especially as I've gotten to know you better and stuff, it's like I'll forget that sometimes, like, oh yeah, Jim's like a legend. But I'm just saying it's cool that you were a part of um, that whole thing. But yeah, and then I was just remembering the Mama I'm a Thug. But anyhow, my point is, yeah, we went to Spike and Mike's in Long Beach. It was at like a cool theater downtown, and I hadn't like I mean, my wife and I like hanging out every once in a while. We'd get the like "Mama I'm a Thug" song stuck in our heads. Um, and it's funny that like later on in life, I end up like kind of getting to know Jim and then connecting him with like, oh, you did the "Mama I'm a Thug," like, being like, oh yeah, I've like known your animation for like a long time. It was kind of a neat thing, but anyhow, meaning needless to say, because of all of that I was just gushing about, I don't want to like gush too much, but um, I just think it's so fabulous that I'm at a point in life where Jim Lujan has made me a little custom animation so I can take breaks without worry on my little tiny insignificant lives. I was very doing that. It was very meaningful. Um, Yeah, Gary was saying, I think the first Beavis and Butthead I saw was Frog Baseball at Spike and Mike's. Yeah, Spike and Mike's was a really cool thing. I almost feel like there are things I miss about that era of entertainment. I'm kind of curious what you guys think, but it was curated. And so, in a weird way, like we're in a really cool era where anybody can do anything. Like, and like my son, like I've sent Jim these videos and stuff, but my son actually has made his own animations, and he's able to make animations that are way more sophisticated than anything I could have made at like 12, Um, yeah, Jim was saying playing Spike and Mike's was terrifying and fun. Bill Plimpton and Rhodey Matteo were also on the same program I was on. Yeah, and like that's the thing. I remember seeing all of those, and like I said, the one we saw with the Mama I'm a Thug, like that was the one. All of them were funny and entertaining, or like I remember there was one that had an old lady get visited by death, and then she ends up getting in like a fist fight with death. That was pretty amazing in that same one. But the one that really stuck with us was the Mama I'm a Thug one, just because the song and it was skewering the area we lived in, because we lived in Long Beach, so you run into those like Orange County white gangster guys like all the time. And like it was just so great. It was just wonderful. But yeah, anyhow, there is something about that time that I miss, and there's something about the time now where, you know, anyone can make their thing and get it out there. There's like a million different outlets to like put things out. And so in a weird way, there's like a diversifying of the indie scene where a lot more people have access to be able to get their vision out. And so that's a really cool field that we live in. But then there is something from like that era that I miss a little bit about like the curation of it. Because there was something really magical. Like nowadays with this is my deep thoughts, guys. I don't know. I'm working on art and thinking here, but it's like now, with the modern age that we live in, I do feel like we get inundated with so much. Um, like when a good example, like when I was younger, and I had a era where I got into punk rock, and I had an era where I got really into digging back into like ska. Favorite kind of music. I know that Jim and Gary, when I ask them what are your top bands, they're like, it's easily any ska band. Like it's all ska. um, but anyhow, I did have an era in punk rock where I got into punk rock, and then I was ordering records from Discord directly. And you had to like order records. Like there would be these little photocopied record label pamphlets that like they just kind of existed. And in my area, we didn't really have like a good music shop, so like it was really like it was almost like Nintendo back in the day, where you know you'd be at school and some kid would tell you like, hey, on level 3 of Mario 3, if you like crouch in this one spot, you'll like go behind the background and then you can get the warp whistle. And you're like, whoa, like that knowledge never was like, unless you were like a kid who was like wealthy enough to have like a subscription to Nintendo Power, the only way you'd find out about those things, like the tricks in video games, or like the secret door in Zelda, from like word of mouth, or from, you know, just like on the playground or whatever, like where people would be like, hey, yeah, you're having trouble on this level, this is the thing you need to do. Or you'd have a friend over, or you'd be at a friend's house and see them do it. And so knowledge would just kind of organically travel, but there was no like internet at the time to just go, how do I beat Mario 3, right? And it was the same with Final Fantasy. Like Final Fantasy took forever to beat because you had to like ask around and maybe borrow somebody's Nintendo Power. Um, but anyhow, so there's something about that era where when you did find out the thing, like the ska thing I was bringing up, like so when I found ska, like I remember getting a Moon Ska catalog, and also like getting the Two Tone catalog. 35 cents in the mail, and then you'd end up with this like cool catalog, and then you had to just kind of take a gamble. So usually you'd start with like a music sampler, you know, and order a sampler, and then from there you'd find bands that you liked and stuff, and you could order merch, like, but it was all like through the mail and through like word of mouth. I guess in bigger cities than mine, you know, that had better music stores and stuff too, you'd have like the record store owner being like the curator. um, or just other people who were really big fans of music and stuff. So there was a lot more like kind of word of mouth to like finding out about stuff. Whereas now, if a kid my age at that, by the way, I'm not like, ska is not on my top, but like, you'd have to kind of organically find out about like first, second, and third wave ska, like just through word of mouth and then through like books or ordering, like and then just organically just kind of discovering stuff. And there was a curation process in that, right? So if you met somebody else when you were getting into it who's like, I want to, you might want to start with like you know um hold on a sec. You might want to start with like the special AKA, or like maybe you want to you know go more old school or something. Maybe you want to do like Desmond Decker. Like that would be a good starting point. And then you just kind of get people into like the deeper stuff, like, or the more contemporary stuff, or like the more kind of punk mixed stuff, like op on. But like the point being, like, you'd find out and you'd kind of learn, and then you'd pass on that knowledge and stuff. And it's like how these scenes kind of developed was like just this like organic thing. But there was like a curation to it, right? Because you'd have to buy a sample, and that sample was curated, or like a label sampler, or you'd have to go to like for indie films, right? You'd have to like go to like an indie festival and pay like admission, and then you'd watch this collection of these shorts. Um, yeah, Jim was saying Gary and Scott did a fantastic voice work on the ad. Yeah, I was saying because Gary was like, Jim did like 99% of it, and I'm like, yes, but that voice, that character, by the way, I play yet, so I don't want to say who appears yet. I'm keeping mysterious for the big reveal when I play it. Um, but that character voice is easily one of my favorite. Uh, in the Luhan verse, like just the voice that Gary came up with for that character at Crestline, it is seriously like one of the funniest, creepiest voices on the planet. I like I cannot um I cannot oversell that voice. I just think it's so funny. It's just such a funny voice. Yeah, Jim was saying, I don't know if you remember, I was creating my own animation festivals for a couple years. Yeah. And and I think like there's something about that time, um and that idea of curation. It kind of exists, but it's never going to really exist to the level that it did then. And there was my point being, there's cool things about both the modern era where there's less curation, and so therefore there's less of a barrier to entry, which is really cool. Especially nice that there's less of a who thing, even though there that still matters and stuff, but it just doesn't, the curation process isn't as gatekeepy as it used to be. And I think to an extent that's a really good thing. But then there's also a sad part where like now, so like back in the day, the ska example I was using, right? When I first heard like the special AKA, and like I ordered like the CD thing of like the best of two tone, right? I felt like it felt different than now if I stumble upon something I like online. Like there was something sacred about finding Fugazi, like, and then ordering from Discord and getting like you felt, it felt more sacred in a weird way. And it was the same with like Spike and Mike's, where if you got hip to like some indie animation from Spike and Mike's, it felt like real significant. Um, those cartoons really mattered, and like they'd stick in your memory because you're like, it's a unique experience and it was curated, and it's something everybody didn't know about. And online and just Google it, um, and find it in 2 seconds. So there's like this kind of thing, like, of that era that, like, because if you forgot a song, like, the worst thing back in the day was like having a tune stuck in your head that you heard years ago and you just couldn't pin it and you forget years, and every once in a while you'd ask people and try to kind of sing it to them, like, do you remember this song? So when you had a song that you loved that's like obscure or something and you found it, um it was like one of the Jim was saying, I'm a rude boy now and forever. um but anyhow, I guess I'm just saying there was something sacred, uh, things back then because you had to work to get it. um and now, like, if somebody was wanting to explore a style of music, they could just go on Spotify and put like a playlist of that style of music and discover every band in it, and know probably more about the history of it than we had access to. um so you end up in this where of um that means everything out there is accessible, and like, so that's pretty cool. And the tools to make these things are less like gate kept. The delivery mechanisms are more kind of more democratic. Like, you can kind of stuff out and get some eyeballs on it. You can build little scenes. Like, you don't need to be the biggest person on the planet to kind of get your stuff seen, which is a big deal. Um, you don't need a record label to put out music, that kind of thing. That's good. But there is a little bit of that restaurant overload, like where, if you go to a restaurant and order food, and it's like an In-N-Out burger is a good example of like the old school way of doing it, where you go to In-N-Out burger. That's more like pre-internet kind of menu. I don't know if that makes sense. Because, like, you go there and you got 5 options, right? And you're going to pick, one of the 5, and maybe there's some things on the secret menu, but it's a very limited menu. Um, and so it's not as hard to discover what you like because the menu is limited. It's like a curated menu. Um, I feel like the internet can be, there's attempts to like curate it, and stuff like that, and there is a little bit more of democratic curation of things, or like algorithmic, and I guess it can be rigged. But the point being, it's like we're kind of all at a diner where it has every food possible. It's a shorter. You go and you kind of want a hamburger, but then you start thumbing through the menu, and it's like, well, do I want steak? Do I want like ramen? You have every food known to man on the menu, and it can kind of create what is it? They did a study a long time ago. I'm rambling, by the way, and I'm working on stuff. Also, I am down to talk about whatever topics you guys want, but it does kind of create this scenario where like they did a psychological study a long time ago where they tested kids with candy. I remember NPR had a story on it. Like, I think it was This American Life or something, where they tested kids with candy, like thing where they're like, hey, if you press this button or whatever, you get candy, right? And then they kind of studied how happy the kids were after getting candy. But they had 2 groups, right? The first group was given candy just without a choice. So they were just given whatever candy they were given, and that's what they were given as a reward for like pressing the right button in this experiment, right? And then they had another set of kids that they would give them the choice of like, 10 different candies. Like, do you want, one of these 10 different candies or whatever? And then they'd pick. And then basically afterwards, they kind of like studied like which of the kids were like the most fulfilled with what they got. And it turns out the kids that were just given the candy without a choice were actually a lot happier, because the kids that got the candy, like whatever candy they wanted, they second guessed their decisions because they had buyer's remorse. Like they were like, well, maybe I should have gotten a Reese's. Like I chose Skittles, but now I'm wondering if I should have gotten a Reese's. And so anyhow, it's like a psychological phenomenon they've observed where people like options, but like when you overload people with too many options, they actually end up like less happy. Um, and so I do feel like there's kind of a too many options thing with the internet where, you know, for bands I really like, but for some reason the bands that I had to really work for are the ones that stick with me. Like, or like the indie stuff I had to discover and I didn't just kind of Google. Um, I don't know. There's like a special place for me in that I don't know if the other method really feels quite as like sacred, because it's, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like there was something sacred about it. So that's my little waxing on that topic. Guys, we're about 20 minutes away from debuting Jim Lujan, the new cartoon that he provided for the break here. And I'm really excited to share it. Jim, Scott, and Gary, Scott Circland and Gary Hodges all contributed to this thing. And I think I told Jim the day he sent this to me, but I will reiterate, like, I think it was given to me, if was it last night? I don't know if Jim's still in the chats, but I believe it was like last night. If it wasn't last night, maybe I'm hallucinating because I've been working a lot. But I believe it was last night, and it literally made my week. It was like, it was just such a surprise. And it was cool that it was kept secret too, because I had no idea they were doing this. It's the coolest thing. It just really made my week, and hopefully it'll make your guys' week too. Like it's pretty hilarious break video. So we'll be playing that at the hour mark, just to kind of debut it. And I'm guessing I'll play it maybe a couple times during the stream, because I like it a lot. It features a cameo. Well, I don't even know if it would be called a cameo. One of the characters in it is a beloved Jim Lujan character, or a behated Jim Lujan character, because he is a villain. But he's one of my favorites. So yeah. Anyhow, that makes me really excited about Crestline too, because it reminded me that, like, yeah, I think Gary came up with that voice at the last Crestline. Am I crazy? I feel like Gary worked out that voice during our last Crestline meetup, because it was cracking us all up a lot. Okay. So we're kind of doing the shading in here. Anyhow, that's something I feel like the democratization of media is a good thing overall. Like I generally think I would like a world where you can have more variety, and more people make a living doing the thing than like one super mega rock star filling stadiums. I like the idea of a lot of little rock stars filling clubs. You know what I mean? I think that's pretty cool to be in that kind of scenario where, you know, you don't have to be on, you know, BMG's, you know, mailing list or whatever to like get listeners for your music. So I like that a lot. But there is something nostalgic, and it might just be special about the stuff that existed before that, and the curation involved in it, because you really, to seek stuff out, you had to really be interested in it. So I don't know, but I do tend to think I think being able to have access to kind of getting things out is a good thing. Shading's always a fascinating thing too, because when I'm shading this hand, I'm like, there's a cool thing about like non-linear where you can do things like that hand. Like I'm really happy with how that came out. That's really just a couple strokes of this brush, but it gets the gesture and the lighting, I think, of the hand, and it can look like a lot more kind of detailed and painstaking than it is. But I mean, I think that hand looks pretty good. That's one of the fun things about this style of shading. All right, guys, we're about 14 minutes away from the debut. Is it debut or debut? I think it's debut. Oh, I was gonna recommend this to Gary if he's still in the chats, but I saw a show on Netflix that might get you in the zone for your nature kind of scene. I don't know if you want to consume other media that's kind of slightly related, but it's called Untamed. It's pretty good. It takes place in like Yosemite, and it's kind of like a crime procedural type thing, but it's like out in a national. I liked it a lot. I wonder though, Gary, if you'll like it, because thinking about it, it might be annoying to watch like detective type stories, like because if you actually work in like forensics and stuff, I'm curious like how much of it. I'm sure it could be like anything where watching it, if they get it wrong, it could be a crazy thing. But it was on Netflix. It's pretty good. It's like a murder mystery in Yosemite. And the cool thing is they filmed most of it in like British Columbia, but to me, I bought it as Yosemite the whole time. Like that's interesting as a show, as it really highlights like kind of how raw and wild like how crazy the outdoors are and nature is. It's definitely shows a lot of the rawness of nature, which is kind of interesting. But it was a pretty good show. But anyhow, I thought it might get you in the zone because it has a lot of scenes out in the park and in the woods, so it might give you some framing ideas and stuff. Although I think most of your stuff is pretty much blocked out by now. Like it's kind of worked out. But if you need inspiration taking place in stuff like a lot of sequences in that, there's particularly a scene where one of the characters gets stuck in a tunnel, and I don't know, the lighting and the way they paste it is really interesting. It's very beautifully shot. All right, we're getting there, guys. We are getting there. So we do have family visiting, so I will tell you guys I'm gonna stream for about another hour and then I'll call it because I don't want to be streaming, till like the early morning, just so that I don't keep people awake or anything like that. But I am gonna stream for about an hour and 10 minutes longer, just so we'll see how far I can get on this. Ideally, it would be cool if I could do the color and the shading. Realistically, it might just be shading. I'm excited because that should give us time to debut the new cartoon, which I'm really excited to share with everybody. So initially, when I was kind of developing this style, I would shade it all on one uh, layer, and then I realized like that's kind of silly. So I try to kind of shade on like different layers. Like I'm not masking things or anything like that, but it's like if I have characters in the foreground, I'll kind of shade them and work that out, and then I'll work the shades for the background over it, and I'll just kind of make new layers as needed, so I can kind of erase without affecting the other sections. But then at the end, I basically just flatten all the shading to one layer. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So it's kind of similar to like what you would if you were doing this, you know, traditionally you would be almost like it would be almost like equivalent to like masking, uh, your background while you do your foreground, and then your foreground while you do your background. So one of the things I've been thinking about too, with just art I admire, like I was thinking about that, as silly as it is, that South Park episode. Like one of the things I like about Trey Parker and Matt Stone that they started doing, like South Park the movie is a really good example of this, where it's a silly premise, but they went so hardcore about it that they were like, okay, if we're gonna have music, we're gonna have like legit like Broadway level music in this. Um, and, and there is something to be said for people committing to the thing they're working on. I guess comedians would almost call it like committing to the bit or something, but I think that is like, um, I feel like going full bore, like do it to the best of your ability. Um, I think that is one of the things that really makes or breaks like art. Like I do think people should do things to the best of their ability as artists. And then let the chips fall where they may. But I think when people do that, it just kind of stands out as unique, because it's like even if you have a silly premise or even a silly style, if you just go full hog like um, you know, to the best of your ability, I think it makes for really dynamic, interesting art. Okay, so now we're basically finishing up the shading on this specific layer. We got like a inflatable pool that's a little for like $30 or something on Amazon, and it's been pretty fun. My son's had his cousin over, so they were splashing around in the pool, being all goofy. Pretty fun. um, I took one day off just to hang with like my son and his cousin, and they were building Super Mario levels on I can't even remember what the system's called. I think it's a DS. but it's like oh no, the Switch. Sorry, the Nintendo Switch. So it's a game where you can. It's like Mario Maker or something. It's an older game, but it's pretty cool. It's like you can build levels and stuff in the style of Mario One, all the way to Mario 3, and then even some of the newer Mario's, which to me are new, but they're very old. But so my son and his cousin were building like Mario levels just to try to like. They wanted me to play them because it's like one of the few games that I can play pretty well. Because that's like my era of gaming. And so they'd build like a level where it was like you have to kill like 100 Goombas. This time, and they'd be like stacked Goombas. So it was like surprisingly very challenging. But it was fun. They kept building like these wild levels, or like a troll level where like every box would like, present like some weird, character that you have to fight. It was pretty fun. They were basically like getting like almost impossible to beat levels. That was pretty fun, but it was cool because it felt very authentic to like the original Mario. I still have a very soft spot in my heart for Mario 3. Okay, you guys, we have finished the Okay. Oh, there it is. All right, we have finished this this background here. And now we're going to debut. Oh, I don't want to discard hidden layers. I just want to merge visible. Now I'm going to save, and we're going to play. We're at about the hour mark, so we're going to play the new Jim Luhan cartoon. So let me play that, and then I'll be right back. So, and I'm going to refill my coffee, even though I brewed it way too strong. Way too strong, guys. Oh. The Kemble files. I'll be right back.
Well, Mr. Stryker, I have you now. There is no escape. You will tell me where the Kemble files are, or you will die beneath the crushing electric arms of my shoptopus.
I hear you chirping, little birdie, but JT Stryker ain't no stool pigeon.
Very well. You have left me no choice. Bring out the doctor. Say hello to Dr. Hodges. I'm sure you're familiar with the doctor and his work.
If by work you mean the murder and torture of innocents, yeah, I'm familiar.
I've waited a long time for this moment, Stryker. I'm going to enjoy every minute of it.
That's what your mother said.
Well, that's a horrible thing to say. You don't even know my mother.
Don't let him interrupt you. Come on, man.
Look, fellas, we can tango here all night, but it doesn't change a thing. You're never getting the Kemble files.
Oh, I beg to differ, Stryker. I have certain negotiation methods.
Your mom has negotiation methods.
Stop it. That didn't even make sense. That's not even... It's not applicable.
Listen up, compadres, and listen good. Option 1, I'm giving you 2 bozos and out. You untie me, I walk out of here, and everybody goes home happy. Option 2, I kill everyone in this room and then...
You idiot! You killed him!
I felt triggered. I've been learning to stand up to bullies. I just read 2 stories. Joshua Kemble's raw, introspective graphic novel chronicling mental health, faith, and the struggle for redemption. I also read Jacob's Apartment, a coming-of-age graphic novel about faith, love, and post-college existential drama. They've changed my life choices.
I'm sorry. I had no idea. I, too, am a fan of the books of the Joshua Kemble. But I'm still going to have to kill you.
kill me with kindness?
All right, guys, that's the new commercial that was made by Gary Hodges, Scott Serkland, and Jim Lujan. I love it. I just absolutely love it. There's just so many things about that. But anyhow, so now that I've played it, we can get into spoiler territory a little bit. Gary Hodges, Dr. Hodges, just the kind of the voice that he does for that, like, just a lot of like kind of weird mouth noises that he does with that. Like, it's just such a great voice. It's anyhow, Dr. Hodges is easily one of my favorite Lujan characters. First debuting in the Full Fungus, and he's just a great villain character, wonderfully creepy sounding. And in this, I like his metal hand. We stand up to bullies, but the way that Gary came up with like making that voice is just incredible. So I love it. And then Scott does a really good, just like super studded, studly James Bond type voice. He's really good at it. Scott did a really good job on it too. And then of course Jim Lujan did great on that too. I think Lujan, my favorite line in there is, "I too am a fan of the Joshua Kemble." Like, it's just so funny. So it's really made my week. That was incredible. I was not expecting that at all. So I really appreciate it. It always makes my day when you guys submit, animations and cool stuff for breaks in the content. So thank you. Anyhow, much appreciated, guys. Okay, we're shading here. We are shading, and shading is what we are doing. What are you guys working on? I'd love to hear what you guys are using this time to work on creating. You know what's a thing that was a big thing back in the day, locally here, was when I was about Ben's age now. They had like local skating rinks where like kids would hang out with like a candy bar and stuff. Anyhow, I just remembered that the other day because I was driving through an area in town that used to have that skating rink, and I was like, man, there was so much like weird, interesting drama that would happen at that skating rink, like with kids. Just always kind of wild, creepy kids who would work at the skating rink, and they'd like set up like a game, like where you're supposed to like. Anyhow. Jim said, "I'm glad you liked it. It's a longer one to give you a longer break." I appreciate that. That's great. And it's cool because now I have some variety, Because poor Frank, like, Frank's Adventures at the Library is incredible, but I don't want to overplay it, So this gives me variety. And it also just kind of continues the commercials that are so incredible by Mr. Lujan. And it's just fun that it's like a friend endeavor where a lot of my friends are in it, which is always really cool too. All right, let's see here. So we're going to go till about 12 at the absolute latest, okay? And that's just literally so I don't, get like murdered by my relatives or my wife. Jim said, I'm going to hit the sheets now. What did the sheets do to you? He said, I'm going to get to work on the unicornians. If you go live tomorrow, I might be able to join you. Cool. Yeah, I might be going live. It might be quite a bit earlier that I go live tomorrow, but definitely just knocking out pages nonstop. So there is a high likelihood that tomorrow I will be going live. I'm guessing more during the day kind of thing. I was kind of curious if Gary's going to start live streaming. Gary was doing live streams occasionally whilst working on his book. I really enjoy live streaming. The other thing, though, that like is tough with live streaming is I very much enjoy, like watching YouTube videos and stuff while I'm working too. And so there's kind of this give and take of it where and do live streams, but there's also times where I like really want to just like watch YouTube videos or like listen to music or something while working. So I try to do a balance. Like generally when I'm penciling, that's when I'll do my like listening to music or something that's like less occupying than like kind of filling content with my ramblings. But then like when I'm doing something like this, it does help to have company and kind of hang out with people and stuff. Now, it is a Friday night. It is indeed a Friday night. Of recording with no saboteurs the other day, so like we did pretty good. Good night, Jim. Thanks again for the video. That was that literally like one of the coolest things that happened to me in a while. So thank you for making my week awesome, and for taking the time to do that. It's really cool. I feel very honored to have a new Jim Lujan thing to share with the world. So thanks for doing that. And to Gary and Scott, like it's just cool that you guys did that and that you managed to kind of keep it a secret is really cool, and meaningful. So yeah, and it makes me excited about Crestline. It's going to be really fun for us to hang out again. The last Crestline meetup was hilarious and wild and fun. I've said this before on the on stream, but it makes a big difference to have creatives that are in the fight to make stuff, and even doing a meetup like that where people don't just kind of wind up only just hanging out, but everybody's actually working on stuff. But like I don't know, it's like an organic hangout, which is I think really great. But like of creatives who like pretty much everybody at the Crestline meetup are the type of people who like if you had your ideal vacation would be like spending time on personal creative projects. That's like my favorite kind of thing. So I love it. Also, he was on a couple days ago, but Scott Circlin joined me a couple days ago, and he shared a pretty amazing sneak peek of his next project, and it's like a drawing of kind of a cover, and it's looking pretty amazing, and it's pretty cool. So you guys should check that out too. Circlin's gonna be. If you guys like Young and the Dead, think of Young and the Dead, but like with Scott just like no holes barred, like just showing off. Scott already does incredible art on everything, but this just looks It just looks incredible. It looks like he's gonna bust out every skill in the book to make it, and I can't wait for his latest project. So, and what'll be fun is I think he'll be working on that at the Crestline meetup and stuff. For those of you who are tuning in and maybe not aware, it's like the Crestline meetup is oh my goodness, what happened there? Whoa. Accidentally was cropping. The Crestline meetup is like an art retreat with a bunch of art buddies of mine and myself, and we kind of do that and hang out, and it's pretty meaningful and fun. Let's see here. What do we have here? So we're basically shading page 154 of Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Just kind of hanging out and shooting the breeze while working on art. So I might have mentioned recently I've had something I liked when I was younger. When I was very little, I would watch sports games with like my dad, you know, and most of what he would watch, a lot of what he would watch was like basketball. Like that was my dad's jam. But then I reached an age where, and I think this might be like an age thing or a different generation thing or something, but there used to be a big divide between like jocks and like geeks, you know. And so I reached an age where I was just like, no, sports are not interesting. But for some reason, the last years or so, I've gotten really interested in watching baseball and really enjoying watching Dodger games and stuff. So, but the Dodgers' performance in like the last like few games they were playing was like very disappointing, and they're kind of back on their A game again. So that's been pretty fun to see. A little more encouraging to see my team, you know, do well. All right. We are getting our shading here. And trying to kind of shade this whole page. And we're just gonna kind of clear that area. So has been working pretty well. I mean, I quit smoking a long time ago, but I replaced it with e-cigarettes like years and years ago. Um, Kind of like right when Ben was like first born was when I stopped smoking like real cigarettes. And so I was doing e-cigarettes, which, you know, was remarkably alternative and stuff. Um, but like a lot of things where it's like too good to be true kind of thing, more and more information came out as the years went on about that. And it's not good for your health either, right? But I had kind of justified the use of it and stuff. And then when my son and I went to a Dodger game, I brought my e-cigarette with me, right? And away, and then I just realized like I kind of want to just not continue with this. So there's been a couple times in the past where I've attempted to like kind of kick the habit, but now I'm using nicotine gum and other like supplements to try to just kind of kick that all together, and it's been pretty successful so far. So I've been enjoying not having that. However, there are some byproduct or not byproducts, but there's some level of adjustment with it where, you know, if I was ever working at night or I needed to focus, like just kind of having that that addiction or whatever was a nice way to, I mean, keep me kind of retain focus or stay awake or clear my head a little bit. And it is interesting adjusting to not having that kind of crutch. And it has been a little bit of a strange thing. But I think overall it's probably a healthy move, you know, to kind of kick that terrible habit. Okay, let's see here. Saving that. Okay. And now we're going to kind of make a selection here. Work on our background. Maybe we can finish. Who knows? They're not as complicated of panels, but I have a feeling probably might not get done by 12. But that's okay. I'll finish a lot of that in the morning then. I will say I mean, I've said this before, but I'm really excited about this graphic novel coming out because I think it's going to be pretty unique. Like, I don't think a lot of people have done a book in this style. And so I think that's going to be pretty unique and cool to kind of put out in the market. I think the story itself is really strong, and so I hope the visuals will. But I just think the style of shading this is like pretty unique for comics, you know. You don't have a lot of soft shaded comics. Okay, now let's do this business. So we're basically just going through and shading, and yeah, I feel like a lot of days I have a ton to talk about, and I feel like today is one of those days where I almost feel like a blank slate. Like I had a really good day today. It was fun to see family. It's fun to have the kid kind of. There's something magical about just like having your kid just like having fun swimming. There was something really magical about that. Just giggling and playing in water. It was. But he seems to be having a pretty good summer, and that to me makes me really glad as a father. Um, I am dreading a little bit the beginning of the next school year. Not that it's bad. I enjoy teaching a lot, but it's been nice to have time off. My wife had to get some new glasses from our insurance. And one of the cool things about being a teacher is, they were like, "Wow, you have like the best copay I've seen in vision in a while." And I was like, "Oh, cool," because like that is one of the benefits of teaching is you get pretty decent benefits. Um, it's not the highest paying job in the world, but great benefits, which is really cool, especially as it's like really new. So that was really neat. And it was funny because when we were there, um, we bumped into who was now an optometrist, and I was like, "That's so cool." Um, that I think is also like one of the cool things about teaching is you get to help people or hopefully be a good memory in people's minds. Um, I think that's pretty cool. But I remember this hitting me a couple, I don't know, it was a while ago. I remember like when I was younger, I think, much more hungry for titles, and being an art director kind of meant something more than it would now. Um, but I remember at one point, I don't know, this was a couple years back, and it's not like the biggest realization in the world or whatever. But I remember having a really hard day and then going to get like a hamburger or something at like a fast food joint, and this served the hamburger, and he was just like on point, and he was like really nice, and you could tell he was like actually like really taking pride and enjoying what he did. Um, and he was an older gentleman about my age, but he was just like super, like it wasn't like a faked thing. It was like he was just super into just doing a really good job doing his thing, and like trying to kind of make people have a better day and stuff. Um, I forget why, but I just, it's not like the most profound thing in the world, but I remember that really hitting home where I was like, I need to be more like that guy. Like, where, regardless of where you're at, just try to do the thing you're doing to the best of your ability and hopefully, help people have a better time or a better day. Um, I think that's a really, I don't know, like profound thing to kind of learn is just like try to make people have a better day. And I'm hoping to kind of do that with these live streams too, where it's like, hey, we're all working on you know, these crazy creative projects and stuff, but, you know, hopefully I can kind of keep some people company while they're working on their stuff or give them encouragement and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the thinking. But I do remember around, I mean, that was like probably, that must have been almost like 10 years ago now, but I remember that being a really important thing to kind of start realizing was like, you know, in life, you don't often, you can work really hard and kind of, but at the end of the day, like you can choose to like try to do the best you can with what you're given, and then like hopefully like not be a jerk, you know. Yeah. All right, we are getting there, guys. I feel like this shadow up here is too weak. I need to be a little bolder. Be a little bolder. Not like a boulder like bold, but boulder like B-O-L-D. Not B-O-U-L-D. Okay, we're doing this. Getting this through. Enjoying some coffee. Knocking out comics. And we debuted Jim Luhan's new break animation. Oh, I forgot to mention, we ordered a new internet connection. So within like a couple weeks, the connection here should be much better because we're going to be switching from Spectrum, which is our current carrier. Cutting in and out. So I think we're going to end up getting fiber optic, which is cool because like that's not been a option in our area like when we first moved here, but it's changed. And I remember a long ago when my wife and I lived in Long Beach and in Portland, we had Fios, which was issues. And there is no Fios out here, but there is a fiber optic option, which I'm pretty excited about because that should hopefully help our internet connection not be as like spotty as it is here. All right, let's see here. All right. Yeah, it's funny. I usually my brain is kind of racing all over the place, and quite often just kind of thinking about different topics and stuff. But today's been just like a very simple day. I had a really good burrito. I hung out with my kid, and yeah, I enjoyed the new South Park episode. That's basically all I've done today, other than just kind of being in the zone, getting work done. Um, I was thinking about. I saw that there's a Pinback concert coming up, and I have never seen Pinback live, but I really like Pinback. They're a good band. If you haven't heard them, they're kind of like post-punk band that was big in, well, kind of big in like the early 2000s. Um, and I still listen to this day. I really enjoy them. Um, I think their big hit was a song called Penelope, which is not their best song, but it's a good song. Just very chill, like good music to like make art to. But I think it would be really fun to see live because he's kind of like a Dinosaur Jr. type, where the main musician of it, I believe, it's mainly just one guy doing all the instruments and stuff, and then I think he tours with like maybe some musicians who kind of fill in his parts. I saw that they have a show coming up at like the Fonda or something, and I was thinking it might be fun to get tickets. Okay, here we go. But I gotta think about it. Like, maybe not, maybe I will. Um, let's see here. All right. I heard tell there might be a new hundreds anthology thing kind of brewing or something like that. So that'll be interesting. I don't know um, if we'll find out much about it, but it would be fun to hear. Try to have Kevin Cross on. I don't think he's involved in it, but I think he might be possibly live streaming soon, which would be really cool. Um, and so we might try having him. I might see if he wants to come on Artcasters just to kind of talk about it and stuff. But yeah, I think Kevin would do great live streams and stuff. Kevin's a really good storyteller, um, and I think he has good tales, just in general, like as a person. So I think he would do great live streaming. One of the things I also like about live streams and stuff is it's a nice way to kind of stay in touch with your friends. Like Facebook. Facebook you can kind of keep tabs on acquaintances and friends that you care about, but maybe don't call as often as you should. Um, and I feel like vlogs are kind of a similar thing where it's like, wow, it's fun to kind of keep tabs on people you care about, be able to get more kind of details and stuff. But I feel like live streams are a pretty fun way to do that too. So I am all about it. I'm looking forward to if he starts doing more live streams. Okay, that's 3 panels shaded. Where are we at for time? We have about 25 minutes left. And the coffee's still flowing, so that's good. See how far we can get. Merge visible. All right. I don't know if I've told you guys this. Well, no, I think I have probably, but like my friend who's also in No Saboteurs, and I like so I had gotten like a scholarship thing from this local organization in the Antelope Valley at the time. It was like called the Cedar Art Center, but it was like not really what it is now. Now that's like a whole thing here in the area I live in. At the time though, it was kind of like I hadn't really heard of it, but it was like this weird old, almost like dance hall kind of area um, in Lancaster that was like stemmed back to like the 40s, and they were kind of using this building to do like art gallery shows and stuff. Like they had a gallery in there called the Cedar Center Art Gallery. Um, and at this time, it wasn't connected. Like now, that same location is part of the Lancaster Museum of Art, but at the time, it was like its own little organization. And they had given me a scholarship for like some art I had done in high school, and then from that, I ended up with like a free membership to the Cedar Center, and so I ended up having like a gallery show there when I was young, old art and stuff, and showed art in the art gallery. But one of the cool parts about it was I was playing music at the time in a band called the Kung Fu's. This was like my friend Josh Patterson, who we've had on streams and stuff, like we've had on the Artcasters, but he's in No Saboteurs with me now. Anyhow, we were in this band called the Kung Fu's, and we, the venues out here at the time really didn't really book our kind of music. Like we were doing a lot of indie rock, like pavement style music, and most of what bands were doing out here was like kind of like rap metal or just heavy metal and stuff, or just like classic rock or like just kind of traditional bar band type music, like um, and so the idea of like some weird indie band, anyhow. But the thing is, we had been playing for quite a few years, and we decided we knew a bunch of bands that played music that was more in the style of the type of music we liked, and all of us had like fan bases and stuff, but we just didn't really have a venue to play in. And so I remember I would kind of hang out at the Cedar Center and get homework done while watching the gallery. And I think as a member, you were like required to watch it a couple days or something. So anyhow, I remember we're watching the gallery. My friend Josh and I had practice, so he came over and kind of painted at the gallery with me. And then we noticed that they had this like giant performance hall, like a big area where bands could perform. And because I was a member, we could rent the hall for like $200 at the time. That was like crazy cheap. And so we asked about it, and they were like, "Yeah, it's only $200 to like rent the hallway." So we started renting it out, and then booking our own venue called the Pink Rebellion. And we just titled it that because it just sounded like shocking and interesting. A meaning, it was just like, yeah, it just sounded like I want to know about this, right? And then we did flyers all over the valley that basically said, "What is the Pink Rebellion?" and linked to a website, and we set up a website. And then we started this venue, and basically how it would work was like bands that wanted to play, we'd all split the cost to rent the hall, and then at the end of the night, we or whatever. And if the bands didn't want to split the door, then they could play, but they just wouldn't get any of the profits, right? So we basically did this, and then it became like kind of a scene out here, where we had like a lot of like art shows, and it was really interesting, and it kind of birthed the whole scene out here in the valley for a little bit. And I did that like years, and it was pretty fun. But one thing I remember about that venue was because we ran it, we could try like really weird experimental stuff. So we played a show where we played as the Doors, and I had like a fake beard and like went on as like a fake play, like basically covering the kung fu's. It was so funny. We played it straight for like most of the show. It was very funny. But like a lot of cool, weird, artsy stuff like that used to happen there, and I think informed the idea that like a career in art, not maybe not music, but a career in art might be possible. Like if we could get this venue and get people to show up and stuff like that, like why couldn't you make art and get people to show up? Anyhow, I was thinking about that the other day because nowadays in Lancaster, it's like a much more, like much less kind of small timey thing. It's like a much more known thing. All right, we're going to get this shaded here so that it goes under. Okay. So we're kind of shading this arm, kind of getting through there. I think we have about 15 minutes left to kind of stream. Hopefully I can finish at least this panel. And then the rest of this I'll probably do in the morning. So if you're watching this after the fact and you want to hang out and chill and make art while I'm streaming, sometimes I'll even have, you know, people in the chats like join me on stream and stuff like that. Feel free to subscribe, hit the bell, all that fun stuff, and I should be streaming you know, the rest of the completion of this page probably tomorrow with possible special guests, you know. All right, here we go. We're going to get this going. I do remember one of my pet peeves, you know, it doesn't bug me. I remember meeting these people every once in a while, especially when I was like working on, you know, making art and stuff, who were like known in their friend group as like the artist in their friend group. And they would dress all artsy and they'd talk big about making art all the time. And they'd be very like artistic in their personality, but like they would never make any, like they didn't actually make art. I don't know if you guys have ever met people like that, but that used to bug me a lot. Like the people who like identify themselves as artists, and then they never made art, you know? They almost like the idea of being an artist more than the act of actually creating. And I know like in my early 20s and mid to late 20s, that was like a really common thing where you'd have like a friend group where they had the artist in their friend group and the person was like the artist kid, but like they didn't do anything. They didn't do they didn't do any art. They just like acted like they were artists. It's a weird thing. I haven't run across this in quite a few years, you know. So like, luckily, that's not a thing anymore that I come across as often. But it always used to drive me nuts. Like, why does everybody consider this person an artist when they don't make art? And I remember when I read The War of Art, the Stephen Pressfield book, something that really stuck with me was like the earning the right to call yourself something. So, like, Pressfield basically was saying, like, hey, if you're writing, like, if you wrote today, then you're a writer, right? Congrats, you can call yourself a writer. He's like, but if you didn't write today, you might have been a writer in the past, but you can't call yourself a writer. Now, that might seem harsh to people, but that actually helps me stay motivated because I always feel like, um, as corny as it is, it helps me psychologically to be like, if I want to call myself a cartoonist, I need to be cartooning. You know, otherwise I was a cartoonist. And I was thinking about it, it's kind of like any other trade, right? Like if you're a mechanic, right? And then you retire, do you introduce yourself as a mechanic? Or do you say I was a mechanic? You know what I mean? It is one of those things where I feel like you should be kind of practicing the trade or the thing as a creative. You know, I don't know. So that also helps me stay motivated to make stuff because I want to be a cartoonist, but I don't want to be a cartoonist who just goes around calling myself a cartoonist and isn't cartooning. I actually want to be active in the game. And maybe I won't be as like active or productive as other cartoonists, but it's like I'm definitely going to be pursuing it if I'm going to claim it, you know? I guess that just ties into a lot of pet peeves I used to have, and I still to an extent have, like, you know, like the idea of people who cosplay something that they don't really, like, they just like the fashion of. I don't know if that makes sense. But I've never been that kind of, I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've ever done that, where I'm like, I just like the fashion of it, but I don't know much about it. If that's ever really fit my kind of weird autistic personality. A good example too is like wearing a band t-shirt, but you don't really listen to the band. And I'm not saying, I don't think it's fair to, that's one of the things that actually bugs me when hipsters kind of do that, where it's like, oh yeah, what's your favorite song? I mean, I can understand like being excited if somebody's into a band you're into and you're like, hey, what's your favorite song by them? But like when it's like a test, you know, a spot check where you're like, oh, you're wearing this band's t-shirt. Yeah. What's your favorite album? What's your favorite, you know, almost like a qualifying test to make sure you're, uh, you know, the band that you're wearing a t-shirt of, you've been, you know. So I don't think people should gatekeep bands or, you know, band t-shirts, but whether you remember the name of the song or not, you should at least like the band if you're wearing a band's t-shirt. I feel like there's nothing more lame than buying a band t-shirt that you don't even listen, like, yeah, you don't even listen to. And I'm not saying like you need to know their whole discography and history, because I think that's just like snobby gatekeeper stuff. Um, you can like an album without knowing everything there is to know about a band, right? Um, but you should at least like the band and not like, I feel like sometimes people like for the fashion of it want to get into certain things because they're cool, you know, not because they like it, but because it's just like the fashionable thing. Um, there's nothing more present than that than like, um, you know, people buying like an old Van Halen T-shirt or you know what I mean, like, and they don't even like they just like the look of the vintage band t-shirt. It's the vintage band t-shirt look. I don't like that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I don't think people should gatekeep music and be like, if you don't know every song by a band, you're therefore not a fan. Like, that to me is obnoxious. So it's like a fine point there. But anyhow, my point is, similarly, I don't think creativity should be gatekept. Like, I think anybody who's pursuing creative stuff and is serious about it, like, should be, validly included. Like, if you're in the fight of trying to be a creative and you're really trying and you're caring about it and trying to get better at your craft and trying to put something cool and new into the thing that you love, I think that's valid. I don't think people should gatekeep that. But if you're not even trying and you just like the look of it, or you like the label of it, that's where I do feel like maybe that should be gatekept. Like, you should be actually trying to do it if you're going to claim it, All right. Speaking of, we have about 10 minutes left. I don't think we'll have enough time to finish the whole page, but I can probably shade her in the foreground here. And we made pretty good progress tonight. Hopefully you guys have had a good Friday night. I'm guessing most of you guys, if you watch this, it'll be tomorrow. I'm going to wait about 8 minutes, and then I'm going to play the Jim Lujan cartoon, the new Jim Lujan cartoon, one more time. And then we'll be kind of ready to rock. Ready to call it a night. Thanks to those of you who showed up at the beginning of this stream. Let's get her shaded. Get her shaded. Anyhow, I don't know what got me thinking about that, but I do remember when I was younger that would drive me nuts. Doesn't as much anymore, but kind of like the artist in a friend group who's not really an artist. They just dress kind of weird and artsy. People are like, "Oh, they're the artsy person." You're like, "Are you?" I don't know. That was a pet peeve back in the day. Doesn't bug me as much. I think as you get older, you get bugged by less stuff, There's some stuff that still bugs me, but... Alright, here we go. Like, a good example is, like, sometimes people get real snobby about like, reading. And I love reading. I think reading is important. I think it's good to be well-read, and stuff like that. But I also think it's good to not be, like, a pretentious jerk about, like, what you've read and people haven't read. You know what I mean? However, if you're, like, walking around claiming to be, like, this exceptionally well-read person, and then you haven't read a book, like, I feel like that's that's a little disingenuous. I don't know if that chapter or sentence or even everything about the books you read, but hey, if you claim you like reading books, like, read some books, right? Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. All right. here we go, guys. Here we go. So what's the scenario? Still got about a good 3 minutes before we're going to play the new Luhan cartoon. All right. There we go. I do want this to get a little darker here, but in like more of a controlled way. And then maybe even here so it's kind of like off screen a little bit. She's in shadow. The shadow. All right. But I do think it's important, like, to if you're claiming something, to at least have some interest, you know. If you're gonna claim being an artist, make sure you're making art, you know. Don't have to be good at it. You just got to be doing it. And then hopefully you'll get better at it as you do it. But I do feel like if it's been like 10 years since you've drawn, then maybe you were an artist. You know what I mean? Okay. Merge visible. This is where we're at, guys. We have most of the page shaded. We didn't get through the whole thing. But we managed to get pretty far. The Jim Luhan cartoon, the new Jim Luhan cartoon. Jim Luhan cartoon. Did I say Hearn cartoon? The Hearn cartoon. The Hearn cartoon. Anyhow, I do have to call it though, because we have relatives over, and I promised that I'd be done at midnight, because I don't want to upset the family that's staying with us. So we're gonna call it. But before we end it, let's just play that Jim Luhan cartoon one more time. And then if you guys haven't yet, make sure you hit the bell and you've subscribed. And we'll be finishing up this page tomorrow. All right, here is the Kemble Files, brand new Jim Luhan cartoon.
Well, Mr. Stryker, I have you now. There is no escape. You will tell me where the Kemble Files are, or you will die beneath the crushing electric arms of my Shoptopus.
I hear you chirping, little birdie, but JT Stryker ain't no stool pigeon.
Very well. You have left me no choice. Bring out the doctor. Say hello to Dr. Hodges. I'm sure you're familiar with the doctor and his work.
If by work you mean the murder and torture of innocents, yeah, I'm familiar.
I've waited a long time for this moment, Stryker, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it.
That's what your mother said.
Well, that's a horrible thing to say. You don't even know my mother.
Don't let him interrupt you. Come on, man.
Look, fellas, we can tango here all night, but it doesn't change a thing. You're never getting the Kemble Files.
Oh, I beg to differ, Stryker. I have certain negotiation methods.
Your mom has negotiation methods.
Stop it. That didn't even make sense. That's not even... It's not applicable.
Listen up, compadres, and listen good. Option 1, I'm giving you 2 bozos and out. You untie me, I walk out of here, and everybody goes home happy. Option 2, I kill everyone in this room and then...
You idiot! You killed him!
I felt triggered. I've been learning to stand up to bullies. I just read 2 stories. Joshua Kemble's raw, introspective graphic novel chronicling mental health, faith, and the struggle for redemption. I also read Jacob's Apartment, a coming-of-age graphic novel about faith, love, and post-college existential drama. They've changed my life choices.
I'm sorry, I had no idea. I too am a fan of the books of the Joshua Kemble. But I'm still going to have to kill you.
Kill me with kindness?
All right, and with that, we're at the 2-hour mark. Thanks to everybody who watched, and I will see you guys on the next live stream. Appreciate it, and see you guys tomorrow morning. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's live stream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream.